if you find at any stage any problem, then just let me know, because the network seems a bit problematic at the moment. So I'll talk about secure computation and communication in the quantum world. And the first slide shows a kind of present status from different perspectives. So in the extreme left in the top, you can see that IBM provides a cloud-based quantum service that you can access from your mobile phone as well. So there are quantum computers. The actual quantum computers are very small. So they are chips like what we have shown below, but that's kept in this kind of structure, where you can see that Sundar Pichai is also standing in front of such a device. So this part is mostly for cooling. So this quantum computers works at very low temperature, so somewhere very close to 0 Kelvin, in a couple of microkelvin, so or in millikelvin. So in those, so this part is mostly used for cooling, and that makes the computer very costly. Now, in NMR implementation, even a molecule can be a quantum computer. So it can happen that somebody did an experiment with a quantum computer, and tomorrow you come and ask that, where is your quantum computer? And he may tell you that, oh, I have washed my test tube. So this is a CH3Br molecule, pretty close to chloroform. And this can be used as a 3-qubit quantum computer. And there is an experiment on Bell state discrimination which was performed in IISc using this molecule and NMR. So here in the Google and IBM, the implementation is superconductive. So there can be NMR. This is the photonic structure in the fourth top right. And then you can have quantum computing with ion trap. But among this implementation, so when we talk about computation, then it can be any of the implementation. And photonic is in the back seat, because photons don't talk with each other. But sending a qubit from one place to other place, if I have to send a qubit from here to BIT Mesra, then the best bet is optical or photonic qubit. So photonic qubits can be realized in many different ways, and what is qubit and how photonic qubits are realized, I'm coming to that. And then in the right hand side, I'm showing a pillar. So this is from a CP called Poznan, and if you look at the base, you will be able to understand that it's a triangle. So it's a triangular pillar, and 3 names are written in 3 sides of it. So they are the people who broke Enigma and prepared the first machine for breaking cryptographic code. So since most of this talk will be on the security aspect, so we remember these people who have broken the code, and then that machine was replicated by many people and made some modifications in Bartholdi Park by Alan Turing. And many of you may have seen it on the movie of Alan Turing, but these people were not mentioned there. So they were the people in Poland who broke the Enigma. Anyway, so I have also mentioned my email and phone number. So if any of you have post or query, you can drop messages. Now, continuing with where do we stand now as far as the secure things are concerned. So the stadium which you see in the top, so that was a Soccer World Cup stadium, and where 2010 Soccer World Cup happened in South Africa, and here a BB84, that's a protocol for quantum cryptography scheme, was used over a network, and to keep the information about the player's movement secret. So when which team is going from which road by which bus, such information were quantum cryptographically encrypted using a quantum cryptographic protocol. So this was a stadium enabled with communication systems which were quantum in nature. The next picture in the down you shows a station in China and a station in Austria, between which via a satellite a secure key was established, and then a video conference happened. So this was the most discussed or major leap in quantum communication, that intercontinental communication become possible via satellite, and now many people are trying to develop such satellite. We'll show some pictures. So this is a quantum computer by D-Wave, which is a bit different from the circuit-based models used elsewhere. This is a apparatus called Clavis. So This is a commercial cryptographic solution sold by ID Quantic, a company located in Switzerland. This is a IBM quantum computer, a 5-qubit quantum computer architecture. So this you can access by, if you just type quantum experience in your mobile, the link will come with your existing Gmail ID. You can log in and you can access this. So you can really have access to a quantum computer, however small, and you can play and you can check many things which are otherwise you cannot test in your lab. So you can do many simple experiments and often do some publishable work using IBM quantum computer. Rigetti is another alternative quantum computer, and Rigetti is also in cloud and is provided by through Amazon Web Service. So India has also started a big program called Quest, and there is another program, Quantum Enhanced Science and Technology program. So many of us have projects through that, and we'll have another program soon called National Mission on Quantum Technology and Applications, and that will be a focused national mission on quantum technology and create many opportunities for many people, not only academicians, engineers, diploma holders, IITs, because we need many different kind of manpower to develop this technology in India. So finally, last one is of a quantum radar. So you know that there are some fighter jets which are sealed, means they cannot be detected by radar, normal radar, but quantum radar is expected to detect them, and China has made a claim that they have already built a quantum radar. Okay. So before we go to a popular understanding of quantum cryptography or secure multi-party computation, I just recall a bit of quantum mechanics which will be required for better understanding of this idea. So for every physical observable, there is an operator in quantum mechanics. So what is observable? Anything that you can measure is observable. So for example, you can measure my age, so time is observable. You can measure velocity of a car, so velocity is observable. You can measure momentum, so momentum is observable. However, although you can see a car, the car itself is not an observable because you cannot measure the car. You can measure its properties like velocity, mass, position, momentum. So position, momentum, velocity, etc. are operators, are physical observable, and for any such observable in the classical world, any physical observable, there is a corresponding operator in quantum world. So I have an operator for position, I have an operator for momentum, I have an operator for energy. The operator satisfies eigenvalue equation. So you know that if the operator operates on function of x and gives you lambda times same function back, so A operating on fx gives you lambda fx, then A is called eigenoperator, fx is called eigenfunction, and lambda is called eigenvalue. Where eigenfunction in this particular case in quantum mechanics is the wave function, and eigenvalues are the discrete values that a measurement can yield. So wave function normally I write as xi x. So xi x is the eigenfunction. So if momentum operator operates on that and gives you that lambda times xi x, then all those possible values of lambda, lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3 are the values that an experiment can reveal. So eigenvalues are discrete, and the word discrete means quantum. So the quantum word means discrete. So classically, momentum can have any value. Velocity can have any value. A car can have a velocity 40 km per hour, 41 km per hour, 40.5 km per hour, 40.0123 km per hour. Nothing stops me to getting any value. But suppose the rule is such that it can be 40 km per hour and then 50 km per hour. It can never be 45 km per hour. Then it will be called discrete. So in quantum mechanics, it becomes discrete. So an operator operates on wave function and gives you eigenvalues, and those are the only values which a real experiment can yield. So if there are, so you all know Bohr model, so only certain energies are allowed. So that's called energy quantization. If momentum is quantized in such a way, then it will be called momentum quantization. So for every observable, there is a discrete set of values that we reveal, that we find in experiments, and the discrete is called quantum. So operators corresponding to physical observables are Hermitian to give real eigenvalues. So is energy operator, and that's what leads to unitary evolution. So time evolution of a quantum state is described by an unitary operator, but measurement operators are non-unitary and thus irreversible. So anything unitary is reversible. So quantum mechanics is essentially reversible except measurement. So all quantum operations or quantum gates are unitary in nature, and so it will be more clear in the, and then we have to model noise. And when we model noise, we use something called Krauss operators. So they are also irreversible. So anyway, so measurement operator M, which projects a state into some basis I. Okay, so this is the whole thing is called bracket. I have divided into two pieces. The left hand piece is called Kate, right hand piece is called bra. So this is bra, this is Kate I, bra I. This is how we read it. So this operates on a state xi, so that will be inner product. So I don't have time to tell you all the linear algebra stuff, but I believe that already 3 days of workshop, 3 days of FBT has happened. So probably someone else has introduced you with such elementary things. So now, suppose I have two states. One is in the basis set 0, 1, Kate 0, Kate 1, and another basis set is plus minus. So these are single qubit basis sets. So you can consider the first one as horizontal vertical and the second one is 45 degree, 135 degree polarized. And so the measurement operator in 0, 1 basis is Kate 0, bra 0, Kate 1, bra 1. So if we take this, a commutation between M0 and M plus, that is Kate plus, Kate minus, the plus is 1 by root 2 0 plus 1 by root 2 1, they will not commute. And quantum mechanics tells me, or Heisenberg-Gunn tells me that any observables, operators which do not commute, I cannot measure the corresponding observables simultaneously with arbitrary accuracy. Okay. So we have some operator, position is x, momentum is r minus I square del del x, and energy is I square del del t. So if I just remember these three operators for this lecture, it will be fine. Then I have a Schrodinger equation. So H operating on wave function, which I have written as Kate xi, gives you E xi. So when I write it in a time dependent form, then H Kate xi is I bar del 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 t because that's the energy operator of Kate xi. So if I solve it, then I see that xi t, Kate xi t evolves like that from Kate xi 0. So this represents a quantum gate. So this is the basic of quantum computation. So you see, since H required to be Hermitian to ensure that it will give you a real eigenvalue. So U dagger will be minus, I will become plus I, minus I, so this minus will become plus, H dagger is H because H is Hermitian, so U dagger becomes U inverse. So that's the requirement of unitary. So since H required to be Hermitian, U required to be unitary, so this is a unitary evolution. So if U exists, U inverse exists, so you can revert back to the initial state. So quantum gates are reversible and they are unitary in nature. So this is how our input state Kate xi 0 is mapped to output state Kate xi t. So what is a gate? Gate is something that defines a unique map between an input state to an output state. So this is what a quantum gate is. Now, I want to tell you one more thing, that every gate does a computation. Be it AND gate, be it OR gate, be it NAND gate, be it NOR gate, every gate does a computation, however small. So if you think that you are doing addition, you are doing a multiplication, all those things are computation. So when you combine them, you have circuit, you do more larger computation. When you combine many of them, you have a big computer, you are doing more complicated things. But every gate, at the gate level, every gate actually does a computation. It computes a function. So look at NOT gate. So if you give f of x, so it gives you x bar. So f of x it computes the function f of x and gives you f of x bar. So if you get 0, it will get 1. If you get 1, it will get 0. So a NOT gate does a computation. So now in the quantum world, how we do this computation? So we have a fundamental unit corresponding to bit is called qubit. So what is a qubit? So bit is a two-level system. Or more precisely, if you want to define it Shannon sense, then your uncertainty before performing a measurement on a two-level system, so both the levels are equally probable. So if you have physically to ensure you need two distinct levels. So suppose there is a proton and here is the nucleus and here is an electron in ground state and another electron in excited state. So the one electron only. So it is either in ground state or in excited state. So it is either in 0 or in 1. So that's a bit. But in quantum mechanics, it can be in superposition. It is simultaneously in both 0 and 1. But the moment I do a measurement, it collapses into one of the possibilities. So either it collapses to 0 or it collapses to 1. Where it collapses, nobody knows. So now I have a single photon. So I don't have a good quality single photon source. That's the problem. So I attenuate a laser and send a photon to a beam splitter. So beam splitter is just like a glass plate, which is semi-silver, which is not a good mirror. So partly it reflects, partly it transmits. So even any good glass do that. That's why you can see the glass. So partly it reflects, partly it transmits. So we may be interested in 50% beam splitter. So 50% it is reflecting, 50% with 50% probability is transmitting, and I have sent a photon only. So the photon is simultaneously in both the paths. It is either it is reflected as well as transmitted. Still, I do measurement. So this is a path type of qubit. That this path or that path, a superposition of paths between reflected path and transmitted path. Similarly, we can have a polarization qubit which is certain probability horizontally polarized, certain probability vertically polarized. So I express it in this way: alpha h plus beta v, or alpha ket 0 plus beta ket 1. Where on measurement in HB basis, this will be give you horizontal photon with mod alpha square probability, vertical photon with mod beta square probability. So this is the idea of qubit, and how to make it. You just take a laser, attenuate it, send it through a beam splitter, you have a qubit. Now, how to do the attenuation? So this is not really a single photon source, it's a close to single photon source. So a laser sent through a neutral density filter. So neutral density filter is an octave which reduces the intensity without changing the photon statistics. So the laser has a photon statistics which is Poissonian, so it will give a Poissonian photon statistics. So it's an approximate single photon pulse solved with coherent pulse. So we assume that a single photon comes, and with half probability it is here, with half probability it is here. So it is actually in superposition. If there is 50-50, it's in 1 by root 2 0 plus 1 by root 2 1. If it is 30, 60, 70, then it's something else. So with certain probability it is in 0, certain probability it is in 1, and we can write this state as alpha ket 0 plus beta ket 1. So that's my qubit. So what can I do with this qubit now? Now I put two detectors. Since the photon is not divided into half a photon in the reflected path, half a photon in the transmitted path, so either detector 0 will click or detector 1 will click. Both the detector will never click. Now, if it is a 50% beam splitter, half of the time this will click and half of the time this will click. So, which one will click? Even God does not know. That's why Einstein told, as God does not play dice. So, I often tell in my class that even Rajnikant does not know which one will click. So, this is called quantum. This leads to a sequence of random. Suppose the first one clicks, I note it as 0, second one clicks, I note it as 1. So this will create a random sequence of zeros and ones, and that will be truly random number. Why? Classically, you can never have a true random number. You think of your familiar random number. Suppose you toss a coin. If you know how much pressure you have given, what is the air drag, what is the gravity there, what is the height from which you are throwing, you solve Newton's equation, you will know the ultimate result, that which is going to your output. You don't put so much effort, that's why you don't know. But quantum mechanically, it's coming from the collapse postulate, that it is simultaneously in both, but when you do measurement, it randomly collapses. So this is a true random number. So where can it be used? It can be used in many places, I mean, weather prediction to many places, and casinos often use it. So the greatest buyer of this product is casinos. So now, as I told that many things you can test it from your office or your mobile now. So you go to IBM Quantum Experience and just use a real quantum computer, put a Hadamard gate. Hadamard gate creates an equal superposition of 0 and 1, 1 by root 2 0 plus 1 by root 2 1, which is just equivalent to my beam splitter. And then I do a measurement. So it depends on how many trial I do. So if I take a single trial, either it is coming 1 or it's coming 0. 0 or it's coming 1. Because it will not be in both. But when I do 1024 times, you see that 42% of the times I got 0, 1, and 56, 7, and 6, closely going towards equal. But even 8192 is not a statistically large number, but you can check that it's giving you a random number by using Hadamard gate and simple measurement. So it will take 5 minutes to do the real quantum mechanical experiment on your mobile phone using IBM Quantum Experience. Interesting thing is that this leads to a commercial product sold by Quantis. So this is the most popular quantum product which is in the market. So ID Quantum is a company which initiated from a university in Switzerland, and that so as I told that many of the casinos buy it. So do you want to? So this is generating true random numbers and which is used for many cryptographic purposes. But for cryptography, any key must be a random number. A key must be random. But this randomness must be shared between Alice and Bob. Must be shared between the parties involved in the multi-party computation. So thus creating quantum random number is not sufficient, but we have to know how to distribute this random number, and that's what leads to quantum key distribution. But before we go to that, do you want to see this ID quantic thing working? Anybody interested to see it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So I just see that means how I can show you that. So I'll show you something from my desk. So you can see this. This is the pack of ID quantic quanti. So how does it look? So the quantis looks like this. So this is the device. So this device is already connected with my computer, and so what is inside? So this somewhat looks like a laptop charger. So this has a beam splitter, as I have shown, a small semiconductor laser, and the attenuator. And then after the beam splitter, there are APDs, avalanche photodiodes, which are working as detector, and some electronics which are creating the thing. So if I can share the software, then I will show you that how it works. Okay, so you can see my screen, and so here are options. So this is the Easy Quanti software which is connected to that device, and I can choose that what kind of data I need. So create a binary data, create integer number. So suppose I create integer number, and I did not choose scaling, and I just ask that enable random extraction. So not from here, then just do a simple thing, and I give a name of the file. Say I give you DIT Mesra. maybe
आवाज आ रही है? I am not getting voice. Maybe there is a fault from here only.
just a moment. I extracted some file and then I'm just showing you. Okay, it's going down or? So this is what is extracted from the random number generator, and you can see that various symbols. So you can choose the symbols, means whether you want to restrict between 0 and 1, you want a binary, or so the complicated password you want to make, you can create from there, and then the number of possibilities for each symbol increases, the password become more and more difficult. Anyway, that was not very easy to demonstrate here, but this is how ID quantic work, and this is a simple ID quantic quantities work, and it's a simple device. So I return back to my slide. Once a random number is generated or a key is generated, then we check their randomness, and there are many randomness tests, and this is a NIST test suite which you can download, and you can check that your random numbers are truly random or not. Now, classically, any key. So suppose you have a sequence. So you have a method. Suppose 00100 something, and then you add that a bitwise XOR operations with a key of same size, and then somebody has to open it. Then if he knows the key, then you will XOR again, and then message XOR key will open the key, and you will left with the message only. But how big the key should be? How to ensure that somebody else cannot break that key? So classically, there is a computational problem in the background. So complexity of that problem. So whether you need n number of steps to solve it, you need n square number of steps to solve it, where n is the size of the problem. So depending upon, we define different complexity classes. So when you can solve some problem in polynomial number of steps, that belongs to P complexity class. If no such known algorithm is there, where you can solve it in polynomial number of steps, but a given answer can be checked in polynomial number of steps, then it reduces to NP complexity class. So normally we choose a problem for NP complexity class to design cryptographic schemes. And if I want to make the key more secure, then I increase the key size. So in the bit length, or in case of RSA, it depends on prime factorization. So there is two large prime numbers to multiply and create a new number and ask someone to factorize it. So you have to divide by 3, 7, 11, all the prime numbers till root over capital N, where N is the number you have generated. So how difficult is the problem? So if it is a 2048-bit encryption key, then it will be secure till 2040. If it is 3106, then it will be created till 2065. So that means the larger is the key, the longer security it will provide. So that's the notion of classical cryptography. But this is conditioned on the idea that you know what is the best algorithm known to your enemy. Now, sometimes there is some tricky thing. A teacher asks a student that I'll give you a phone number and you have to find out the name. So normally in the telephone directory, it's arranged according to name. So if you give a name, it's ordered and searching is easy. But it's a, when the given a phone number, it's not an ordered set. So searching will sometimes take you n searches, sometimes it will take you to one searches. So it's of the order of n by 2. So that's how you measure complexity. The student answered, I can do it in one search. I'll just call that number and ask his name. But the person can give you a name. He can deny to tell you the name. But we calculate the complexity in the worst case scenario, and if we use quantum resources, this requires of the order of n searches, and classically, quantum mechanically, it can be done in root n searches. So that's called Grover's algorithm. But you think about this boy's idea, that there is always a possibility that in a single search it can be found. The same things can happen even with the cryptographic code. However, less is the probability. There is a probability that sometimes you may be able to solve it in easily. Now, a bit of computing. We can solve complex problems of BPP complexity class. So which kind of problem we normally do in quantum computing? So these are the probabilistic algorithms where error is bounded. So normally it is believed that we can solve problems using quantum computers which belong to BPP class. So our interest for computer scientists is to find out whether there are problems in NP which does not belong to BPP. So if in NP there is some problem which is outside BPP, then we can design cryptographic protocol using them, and then probably with the, once again, it will be conditional because at the moment we don't know any quantum algorithm which can solve problems outside BPP. So if that we take as a conjecture that only BPP problems will be solved by quantum computer, and we find out a problem in NP, so then I can have something called post-quantum cryptography. So at the moment, there are several protocols in post-quantum cryptography, which are supposed to be a classical algorithm, but which is thought to be remain secure even when a quantum computer is built, because there is no known quantum algorithm to break them at the moment. So here is a cartoon. A boy, boss, you get an F grade as you cannot solve any problem in 3 hours of exam. The student told that, well, all the problems were in NP. So with respect to algorithms, I know. So the teacher told that unless you study, everything will appear in NP. So if you don't know, does not mean there is not a polynomial algorithm. So somebody else may know that. So classical cryptography is always conditionally secure, but quantum cryptography is unconditionally secure. With security comes from the laws of physics, not from the complexity of a mathematical problem. So that's the difference. So the difference was practically appeared with more importance with the advent of source algorithm. So source algorithm can solve prime factorization and discrete logarithm. Prime factorization was the core of RSA cryptography, which is popularly used in classical world, and discrete logarithm was the mathematical problem behind Diffie-Hellman cryptographic protocol. So what Peter Shor did, Peter Shor shows that if I have a quantum computer, I can solve this problem in polynomial number of states. But the problem is that this Peter Shor's algorithm requires a large register and large quantum computer is required. So building large quantum computer is difficult because of the presence of noise at the moment. But gradually there are hybrid algorithms are appearing and we can solve large numbers. So Panigrahi gives the first talk of probably in this meeting. So Prashant Panigrahi of ISAT claimed that they can factorize 90 lakh plus using IBM quantum computer. UA processor factorized 2 lakh plus. Some people in China factorize about 3 lakh. So the larger numbers are factorized using laser resources in recent past. And the quantum computers are also increasing in size. So now there are 50-qubit computers with different groups. So RSA and Diffie-Hellman is really in threat. The other threat is that in the classical world that you can make a copy of the information. So you can make a copy of the information and in future you can try to break it when you have a scalable quantum computer. So that's not the case in quantum world, because in quantum world cloning is not allowed. That's called no cloning theorem. So you cannot keep a information clone now and use it in future. So quantum cryptography was known from 1984, But unless 1994 Peter Shor's algorithm, quantum computing algorithm, which came for prime factorization, classical cryptography was not in a real threat. Now the real threat comes, and then things evolve in two ways. One is to go for fully quantum solution, and one is to look for problems of the classical world, mathematical problems, which does not have a quantum algorithm. And believe that even when a quantum computer will be built, such an algorithm will not be built. So my classical protocol will remain secure. So those leads to a set of systems called post-quantum cryptography. Well, so as I mentioned, that although Shor's algorithm is there, but we cannot make a large quantum computer and break all the classical code, because making a large quantum computer is difficult because of noise. So what leads to noise? I told you that when you have a qubit and you do a measurement, it collapses to one of the possible states. But even if when you don't do the measurement, it may collapse because of interacting with the environment. So in quantum language, we call it open quantum system. So when you are teaching a particle in a box or a simple problem or hydrogen atom, you have only the particle and the box or the hydrogen atom, nothing else. Then it's a closed system. But in reality, everything other than the box, particle, and the particle is your environment. So that leads to open quantum system. So here is a cartoon to explain that. An interview is happening and somebody asks the candidate, have you done anything on quantum computing? The candidate is saying, yes, I was part of every experiment. I was part of the environment. So the environment is a problem that leads to unwanted measurement, unwanted collapse. I cannot keep the state stable for long. So for example, in this low temperature we work because the lifetime of the state increases slightly. So suppose that you prepare a state and keep it for 1 millisecond, and each operation takes 1 microsecond, then you can do 1,000 operations before the state become unusable. So that's the reason that the development will happen gradually. So things like will not happen like a magical way that it shows that in quantum world, of course, everybody will open an account in quantum bank where the security will come from quantum resources. So here in the picture, you can see that there is a classical bank and the quantum bank. Everybody is opening account in quantum bank and closing account in classical bank, which has 50 years of state banking experience. Because if a quantum computer is built, your classical security measures will no more remain secure in most cases. So the girl is asking the man that what happened? And the man is telling that yesterday a scalable quantum computer is launched, so RSA is no more safe. So something like that will not happen like a Spielberg movie in a magical manner that someday, some night, somebody will discover the quantum computer. It will be a gradual development. So from few qubits, 6 qubit, 8 qubit machines, now we have 50s of qubits, and then soon we'll may have 100 qubits, and gradually this will increase. But cryptography, the notion of security has to be changed. So there are two things. One is computation and one is communication. Both require security, and this is in a glance that's what kind of things happen. So secure quantum communications, normally we talk about quantum key distribution, that there is a key and you have to substitute from one place to other. But there are other aspects of that. So when you can create a key and then you use the kind of XOR applications, I told you that you have a message, you take the equal size key, and then you do bitwise XOR operations to find out bitwise XOR operation and create a key. But create an encrypted message. But you can also do direct communication. That's called quantum secure direct communication. That without generating of keys, you can make a direct communication of the message. You can also do. There are two aspects of secure direct quantum communication. In one, you don't need any additional information for decoding. In one, that's called QSDC, and when you need some additional information for decoding of the message, that's called DSQC. And they have a controlled version, so that's called CQ-DSQC. So QSDC stands for Quantum Secure Direct Communication, and DSQC stands for Deterministic Secure Quantum Communication. So these are implemented often using POP, called particle order permutation, but nobody knows that how to implement POP in a real technology. There are other commonly discussed challenges like repeater is not available, there is no quantum repeater. Good quality single photon source is not available, single photon detector's efficiency has issues. But there are other things like quantum cryptography is apparently unconditionally secure, but these are implemented using real devices, and the devices can have imperfections, and one can exploit device imperfections, and that leads to different kind of attacks like 6 and 7. Then we have some computational problems. So there are hacking probabilities, there are authentication issues. There is a problem with finite key size because most of the time security proof is done with a infinite, considering the key is infinite. But another interesting aspect is SMC or secure multi-party computation. So where security is needed, but a computation is done by involving more than 2 parties. So such examples are auction, online shopping, banking, voting. So many people vote, and then somebody has to add up those votes and count. Here too, socialist millionaire problem where there are 2 millionaires who want to compare whether they have equal amount of asset or not, but don't want to disclose how much asset each of them has. So we'll come to this problem. So the whole point is that not only the communication, even the computation requires often security like voting, auction, e-commerce, and we have quantum solutions for such cases too. Now, I have already shown you that how a cryptographic, how a key is created. But now I want to show you how you can use a lab level experiment. This is something which you can buy in your college and you can demonstrate to your students. So this is the Thorlab set of quantum cryptography kit, and you can show several protocols using this. So this we'll talk. So here is in the beginning, this box, this table is for Alice. In the middle, it is Eve, the eavesdropper, and the last part is Bob. So here is a single. You can see that there is a laser pointer kind of thing. That's a semiconductor laser, and then there is a polarizer. So the semiconductor laser gives you horizontally polarized photon, and then you can choose the axis of polarization. So if you make it 45 degrees, then the 45 degree light will come. If you can make it 135 degrees, you can make it 90 degrees, and so on. So you can choose the state of the polarization of the photon coming out of this. So that's what Alice is encoding in. So I will use a quantum random number generator, create the keys, and I will use those keys subsequently to decide, because Alice is supposed to create zeros, 1, 0, 1, plus, minus in randomly. So how will make it random? I will use a quantum random number to make it random, and so by hand I will choose the orientation. Now here is a Eve. What Eve does, Eve randomly measures those, and in the measurement we send data, and then recreate the state and send it to Bob. So Eve has one setup which looks like Bob. So Eve also chooses this polarization. After polarization, he has detectors. So one detector is in this side, one detector is in this side, and in between there is something called polarizing beam splitter. So what it does, the polarizing beam splitter is the optics which allows horizontally polarized light to pass and vertically polarized light to reflect. So if you send horizontally polarized light, then this detector will click, and if vertically polarized light is sent, then this detector will click. And but if you have to choose a correct basis, then only this will work. Suppose Alice sends 145 degree polarized light, and he chooses 0 degree polarized light, then with half probability it will be 0 and this will be clicked, but that will not be the correct notion, because it will be wrong detection. So whenever Alice's polarization axis and Eve's polarization axis will not match, that will lead to half of the incorrect result, and he will create it, and again that will lead to half of half, 25% of the wrong detection. So those 25% of the time, Bob will be able to detect that somebody is in between who is trying to eavesdrop, and then I will not use that for further communication. So I repeat, suppose Alice creates a plus script, which is 1 by root 2 0 plus 1 by root 2 1. But Bob, instead of choosing plus minus axis, Eve created 0, 1 basis. So Eve got it as 0. And Eve created 0 and sent it back. And Bob is also giving arbitrary polarization, and when the polarization axes match, then they are keeping those data, and all those cases where polarization axis does not match, they are or basis does not match, they are dropping them. So when the bases match, they should give the same result, but if the 0 comes, with half probability 0 will be plus, because 0 is 1 by root 2 plus 1 by root 2 minus, with half probability it will be minus. So if it got plus, you will be happy, but if it got minus, then you will know that somebody is eavesdropping. So how many cases this will happen? Out of 100 cases, 50% of the time, you will choose incorrect basis, and 50% of that, so total 25% will lead to a detection of eavesdropping effort. So that makes quantum DB84 protocol different from. So this is what we are showing. So this is the Alice's sender, light source. Then there is a polarization rotator, and this is Eve who has a Bob kind of component and the Alice kind of component. So we can implement DB84, B92, SARG04, etc. in the lab, and you can also buy it in college and do it. So this is a laser power meter through which in an optical bench we measure the intensity, and we see that we are supposed to have single photons, and this field does not give anything close to single photon. It gives million and million photons, but it can explain you the idea. So the idea is that from the laser you are creating horizontally polarized photon, vertically polarized photon, 45 degree, 135 degree in random. The second polarizer you are setting, and then you have a polarizing beam splitter and then 2 detectors. So this is the Alice Bob setup, and in between you are applying Eve. So if Alice's basis is cross and Bob's basis is plus, then those will be dropped. They will not lead to 60. When both of them are using plus basis, that will lead to 60. Both of them are using diagonal basis, that will be kept. So all those which are red circle will be kept and rest will be dropped. So this is how we work. Now we did it for. So this is the Alice, Eve, and Eve has Alice kind of setup. So this is in our real lab, and this is how it works. This is Alice, Eve, Bob, and we switch on a light. Probably you are not hearing the sound. And so this is a Bob kind of setup. So here Eve does the measurement, and then Eve creates the whatever Eve observes, that Eve recreates it and sends it to Bob, and then Bob does the measurement. So you can detect the error here. So this was some kind of real observations that Alice's basis and Bob's basis. So all those cases where the basis mismatch, they will be dropped, and only cases where the bases are matching, they will be kept. And then we'll compare that how many of them are giving you erroneous results. So that will give me an idea of whether Eve is there or not. Okay. Now I want to tell you something more fundamental. Suppose there is a beam splitter and 2 detectors, and I tell you that it's just like a ball kind of structure. It's not that simultaneously it is in both sides. So sometimes the ball goes here, sometimes the ball goes here. Then also my observation statistics as before would be same. But now I have 2 mirrors and they are taking it here. So if it is a ball kind of model and I send 100 balls, 50 will go up and those 50 will come here, 25 will go up the detector and 25 will come here. And similarly, the ones which are going through this transmitted path will be reflected and 25 of them will go here. So the detection probability will be 50-50. But this is called Mach-Zehnder interferometer. But in reality, I found that only one detector clicks, the other one never clicks. So in one case, constructive interference happens, in other case, destructive interference happens. So this is a wave-like phenomenon, and wave-like phenomenon occurs only when it's simultaneously in both paths. The path information is something for particle, the trajectory is not known. So it's going like this, so it's simultaneously in both paths, and then it constructively interfere in one place and destructively interfere in the other detector. So you can test this using IBM quantum experience by giving 2 Hadamard and then doing a measurement. So now these have cryptographic applications. So these are the simple optics. This is Mach-Zehnder interferometer. So if this observer, this is called BOM. If the BOM is not there, the light comes and both the detector. So the top detector clicks. The moment I put an observer or a detector here, a BOM, so the light goes either from the top or from the bottom because this is detected. So if this is detected, I know that here is a photon. If I don't need to put another detector in the upper path. If first one is not detected, then it must be in the upper path. But now I know the trajectory, so it's not behaving like a wave. So with half probability it goes here, half probability it goes here. So out of 100 photons, 25 photon will reach D1, and then I know that here is a bomb without sending a photon to that bomb. So I can detect. So my perception of viewing is that when I send a light and return back, then only I can see. But now without even sending a light, I can see its existence. So this is an interesting experiment called counterfactual quantum integration, Elitzur-Bedman bomb testing, etc. But now you consider that one arm of the Mach-Zehnder interferometer is with Alice, the other arm is with Bob. And Alice and Bob randomly put obstacles. Then what will happen? So when both of them put obstacles, no light will pass. When none of them put obstacles, D2 will click. But when one of them put obstacles, it is equivalent to A, and with certain probability D1 will click. When D1 will click, Alice knows whether she has put the observer or not. If she has not put, it must be Bob. So similarly, Bob knows whether Alice has put or not. So they know that whose observer is creating the click. So if they pre-decide that if Alice's observer, it will be called 0, if Bob's observer, it will be called 1, then they will have the same sequence of zeros and 1. So even Eve will know that G1 is clicked, but Eve does not know who put the observer, so Eve will not be able to detect whether it's going to be considered as a 0 bit or 1 bit. So that's called a simple quantum cryptography. So what leads to security? So I explain another thing. So this is an Mach-Zehnder thing, but with a delay. So in DD84, we got the security from our inability to perform measurements 0, 1 and plus minus basis simultaneously. And now, in this case, I create a plus b by root 2 and a minus b by root 2. So they are orthogonal, so they can be detected simultaneously, but part A is delayed here and part B is delayed here. So A and B are not simultaneously present in the channel anytime. So this can be, so Eve cannot do a measurement in A plus B, A minus B basis. So quantum mechanics is not actually completely probabilistic theory. So if you don't know the basis, you measure a plus 1 by root 2 0 plus 1 by root 2 1 in plus minus basis, it will always be plus. But if you measure in a wrong basis, it will give the probabilistic character. So by hook and crook, you have to make the spatial basis in which it is not probabilistic inaccessible to Eve. So the origin of security arises from this. So this is the cartoon. So a teacher asks a student give an example of quantum superposition, and the student tell marmaid, which is half a fish, half a girl. So teacher asks that nobody has ever seen it. Then the student tells that whenever you try to measure, it collapses to girl or a fish. But that's not quantum superposition. So in that case, you must have a marmaid basis also, and when you do the measurement in marmaid basis, you will see it as marmaid. Well, now we come back to the Chinese experiment, how it works. So when the satellite is over China, so it creates a Q1. When it's over Austria, it creates a Q2, and then it makes the Q1 XOR Q2 and announces that. So since China knows the key, or Austria knows the key which it shares, so he XOR Q2 once again. So Q2 XOR Q2 cancels and is left with Q1. China already knows Q1, so both of them have Q1, and now they can use that key to. But the problem is that this thing cannot happen between Delhi and Kolkata or Delhi and Bombay because the light pollution is so high that it will not work. So we have to find out the ground stations in some place where the darkness prevails because I need single photon kind of communication, but this is realistic and many countries are trying, and these are normally low Earth orbit satellites and from which we do the communications, and normally it's from satellite to ground, not the other way around. So here is some pictures from my students who are visiting the Chinese satellite. Vistas is coming, and then these are the apparatus. Now, people are trying to go beyond these things and establish quantum internet. Earlier, it was point to point. So here is the announcement of plan to build a quantum internet that might be unhackable. Then I already mentioned that apart from communications, people are doing computation. This is the oldest story in 2007. ID Quantic, whose Quantic device I was showing you, was able to show a quantum voting solution, internet voting solution to Swiss government, which was a quantum voting solution. So this up to this is everything positive, looks like everything is unconditionally secure, but life is not so much fun. Quantum cryptography is not omnipotent. There are cryptographic tasks which cannot be, apart from the hacking possibilities, which cannot be done with unconditional security. For example, in two-party scenario, bit commitment, oblivious transform, remote point talking, these things have a hierarchy and they cannot be done in unconditionally secure manner as long as two parties are involved. So this was first shown by Liu, and that leads to a kind of definition of a set of problems. Of course, the classical security people were familiar with such things, but these are quantum notions. So I'm interested in this kind of thing. So socialist media are a problem. Compute f of I, j, I comma j. So I is an input given by one user, j is an input given by one user. So if I is equal to j, f of I j is equal to 1, and if else f I comma j is equal to 0. So I just need to know the computation will yield whether I is equal to j or not. So there are 2 millionaires, they want to know that their amount of their assets is equal or not. So that's called socialist millionaire problem. But unless it's equal, then they know each other's assets. But unless it is equal, they will not be able to know who has more assets or who has how much. So even if I introduce a third party, the third party will not know the value of I or j. Third party will only know that I is equal to j or not. So in two-party scenario, this cannot be solved. In three-party scenario, this can be solved, and we have also introduced some protocol of this. So this is a particular task where security is needed, but it's a computation, it's not communication. So this is called quantum private comparisons, and many people have papers on this, including we have a couple of them. So I introduce a protocol now, which is beyond QKD. So this is called quantum dialogue protocol. So quantum dialogue is something interesting because if you and me can simultaneously talk, then of course, if I decide that I will not talk, then you can communicate directly to me. And if you decide that you will not send the meaningful message, so that will be quantum secure direct communication. And if you decide that you don't, instead of sending a meaningful message, you will send me some random zeros and ones, so that will be key. So ability to do quantum dialogue implies that you can do quantum secure direct communication, quantum key distribution, etc. So what we show here is that I have a shared Bell state, 0, 1 plus 1, 0 by root 2. So this is the Bell state which we share, entangled state. And say, Bob creates it, and Bob wants to encode 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1. So to encode 0, 0, he applies a unitary set. Identity operator 0 to apply 0, 1, he applies not get. To apply 1, 0, he applies IY. So these are the Pauli matrices, and to 1, 1. So he applied the encoding operation and sends it to Bob. Alice. Alice does the same thing and returns it to Bob. Now Bob does a Bell measurement, and Bob does a Bell measurement. So suppose Bob gets that it is 0, 1 plus 1, 0 by root 2 only. That means the product of his encoding, so Bob will keep on 1 qubit and send only 1 qubit to Alice, and Alice will also apply on the same qubit. So since the entire Bell state is not available in the channel, so neither Alice nor Eve can do a Bell measurement on that. So when it returned back to Bob and Bob got the same Bell state, then Bob knows that the product of Alice's operation and Bob's operation is identity. Identity among these 4 operations can happen in 4 ways. Identity into identity, X into X, IY into IY, Z into Z. Since Bob knows which operation he has applied, he knows which operation has been applied by Alice. Same is the other cases. So suppose we got that this become now, in the first qubit become 1, 1, and it become 0, 0. So that means the product of Bob's state and Bob's operation and Alice's operation is X gate or NOT gate. So how many different ways that can happen? Alice has applied identity, Bob has applied X. Bob has applied identity, Alice has applied X. Or Alice has applied IY, Bob has applied Z, or Bob has applied Z, Alice has applied I. So Bob has applied IY, Alice has applied Z. So there are 4 possibilities. So since they know, and then Bob announces the measurement outcome, since Alice also knows that what Alice has applied from the measurement outcome and knowledge of initial step, they will know that who has applied what. So this is a dialogue protocol. This is information theoretically, this is leaking some information. Why? Because the uncertainty, Eve is unaware of which of the 4 alternatives have happened. So log 2 base 4 is 2, so Eve's uncertainty is 2 bits, whereas Alice and Bob is exchanging 4 bits of information. Alice is sending 2 bits of information, Bob is sending 2 bits of information. So apparently 2 bits are leaked. But if this can be used for a socialist millionaire problem, then ultimately I am computing 1 bit of information. So how that will work? So somebody else, third party Charlie will create that state and keep 1 qubit with himself and send the qubit to Bob. Bob will encode, send it to Alice. Alice will encode and return back to Eve. Charlie. Charlie does a measurement, Bell measurement, and if he gets the same Bell state, then he knows that Alice and Bob has applied the same operation, and he just announces the outcome, and that so Charlie will have to announce whether he has got the same output or not. If he has got the same output as his input, then Alice and Bob have same assets, they are equal, socialist millionaire problem is solved, and if not, they don't have equal assets, but they don't know how much assets is there. Since Charlie does not know who has implemented which operation, Charlie will not be able to find out who has how much assets. So this is a simple task of secure multi-party computation, which is called socialist millionaire problem. Now we come to some other problems. So recently, Mamata Banerjee has sued in the court that he has not lost the election. Trump was shouting that he has not lost the election. Can we avoid such questions? Earlier, AAP had shown the voting device is hacked. So can we have a voting scheme which use quantum resources? The answer is yes. So here is a simple voting scheme introduced by Hillary, and instead of a qubit devices, it works with the qubit and starts with an entangled state of this form. So I'm showing that 0, 0 plus 1, 1, but instead of that, this qubit state is like 0, 0 plus 1, 1 plus 2, 2 plus 3, 3 plus n minus 1, n minus 1. So it's an n level system that's called qubit. And the operation to vote, this is a binary voting. So 1 qubit is kept with the moderator of the vote or the coordinator, and 1 qubit is sent to the voter. So if the voter wants to vote yes, he just apply a unitary operator to shift k to k plus 1. So if 1 yes vote, then all the states become like this. The 0 become 1, so it becomes 1 0 plus 2 1 plus 3 2 plus 4 5 and so on. If there are two people vote for yes, if somebody has to vote for no, he just put identity. Then the state will become like k plus 3 k summation. Suppose 3 people voted yes. Suppose n people voted yes, then say small n, then k plus n, k plus n, k. So I do it. Once it's written, so the person who is counting the vote, he will do a measurement and he will know how many people have voted yes vote. So this is just a simple example. These are some loopholes, but I'm not interested in explaining all those things in one lecture. So the message is that voting can be made more secure by using quantum resources. So at the moment we are working on something called anonymous quantum veto. So you know that in UNESCO and such places a veto is important. So that's a particular kind of veto. Now I talk to something called delegated quantum computing, which is required to be blind. Now I already mentioned about IBM and other such things like Amazon Web Service gives you access to Rigetti, but now suppose you are buying them. And if you are buying them, you want to be ensured that they are doing this in quantum computer. So you have to check that they have not done the job in a classical computer and send you the result. So this is one thing. Second requirement is that secondly, you should not be interested to disclose that what you want to do, whether you are running a Schwartz algorithm, what is your outcome. So the task you must delegate to someone who must be blind. So you want to, because most of the users like me, I have a laptop, I have a mobile phone, those are classical devices. Somebody else has a powerful quantum device. I want to delegate the task there, but I don't want to disclose him that what computation I'm doing there. So I have to make it blind and I have to delegate it. So and that becomes very important with the advent of these cloud-based services. And it's expected that in near future also quantum resources are costly, will not be available to end users. So end users will require to secure his privacy and get it done from privacy of the results as well and get it done from somebody else. So the question is, can a completely classical user do that? The answer is no. So a specific example is that you are doing Schwartz algorithm and you just want to check that you want to implement Schwartz algorithm in IBM quantum computer. You don't want IBM quantum computer to know that you are implementing Schwartz algorithm. So this is showing that blindness is impossible for purely classical clients. So if you are purely classical, like as it is at the moment, that you have a laptop, you have a mobile phone, and you want to get a job done from IBM quantum computer, you cannot do it. So if you can generate a single qubit state of arbitrary polarization or arbitrary single qubit state, then you can send those qubits. So you have a quantum channel between your device and IBM state or a quantum computer. And of course, you have a classical channel, then you can do it. If you have a measurement device, that final measurement is done at your end, then before the measurement, nobody knows what is happening. So then also you can ensure. But a completely classical user, classical computer and the quantum computer and the classical channel cannot, of course, delegate a job, but it cannot be blind. So blind delegated job will be impossible unless somebody can show that PQP is a subset of NP. So this was the important results which we were briefly telling, but delegation become important. So there may be small quantum devices will be attached with your mobile phone and laptops in future, which are otherwise classical, but with some quantum devices. Okay, can the quantum advantage be given, quantum security be extended to classical users? The answer is yes, and such a user is called classical user, and they can do certain things. So they can do a measurement on quantum states, but only in computational basis, that only in 0-1 basis. And in 0-1 basis, we can create a state also 0-1, but we cannot handle superposition, and we can reflect back. So some qubits are coming, so you can decide either to measure or reflect. So here is the situation. So Alice creates a random sequence of 0-1 plus minus. So Alice is a quantum user. So this is just like DDIC code. So polarized in horizontal, vertical, or 45 degree, 135 degree, and send it to Bob. Bob does either a measure or reflect. So measurement will only happen in 0-1 basis, and he can reflect it back. So that's what Bob does. So Bob chooses randomly either to reflect, that is control, or to measure it in Z basis. So that's in 0-1 basis. And we send the same. So there are 4 possibilities. The actual qubit was made in Z basis and it is returned. Actual qubit is prepared in Z and it is measured, so that's it. Or actual qubit is prepared in X basis, it is measured or shipped. So there are 4 possibilities. So if there is a large number of them, so all of them will happen in 1/4 possibility. So all the cases when it is created in plus minus basis and measured, so that will not lead to any conclusive result because that randomly give you 0 and 1. So we ignore them. All the cases in which it is reflected back. So if there is no if, Alice should return back, Alice should receive them and measure in the same basis, and Alice should get the same result. So if no result has been changed, So just like BB84, then eavesdropping has not happened. And all those cases where Alice has prepared in Z basis and Bob has measured, and after measurement, Bob recreates that state and sends to Alice, and Alice will also get the same result. So that's what he has initially sent. So then they know that these results are also available with Bob and correct results. So Alice will disclose the coordinate of such cases, and Bob will know from the corresponding values that whether the value is 0 or 1. So same set of zeros and ones is now distributed between Alice and Bob. But efficiency of this will be much lower than that of BB84 or other quantum cryptographic protocols. So at the cost of efficiency, a classical user who can either reflect or do a measurement in 0-1 basis can also get advantage of quantum cryptography. So now Samsung is selling a phone which is claiming that they are giving advantages of quantum cryptography to end users. So that may not be of this kind, but we can have this kind of scenario that in a quantum world, when a quantum computer will be discovered, banking will no more remain secure, and you may have a classical device, but still by following this kind of trick, a classical end user will be given the advantage of quantum security. So many things can be done with semi-quantum communication, etc. So it's time, so I'll just give you quick glimpses of things other than, so one is that semi-quantum e-commerce is possible. So many ways you can do. So any protocol of quantum controlled direct secure quantum communication can lead to e-commerce. So another possibility is, so that's the different versions of e-commerce called quantum online shopping. So here is a buyer and a Bob, and the bank online store, Charlie's bank buyer is online store. So this is a tripartite thing. And when you want to buy something, you tell order Bob, and Bob asks money from bank, and bank asks you that whether you authenticate or not. If you authenticate, then bank releases money to Bob. This is how it works. So Charlie is controller. So he sends some qubits to Bob. He sends some qubits to you with the BB84 subroutine. Alice encode n qubits with n decoy qubits. Send it to Bob. So Charlie created the channel, and now you communicate with Bob that I want to buy this thing. And Bob sends, when Alice authenticates, when Alice is authenticated, then Charlie releases the money to Bob. So anyway, this thing works, and they are more or less familiar of it. So you can even do quantum e-commerce. But as I was mentioning, that the protocols are not always unconditionally secure, and there can be tricks to attack them. So this is a simple trick. So here are polarizers. We all know that Malloch's law is applicable, and if this is the horizontal polarizer, this is 135 degrees, this is a 45-degree polarizer. Now, he uses something called circulator. So circulator sends a photon. If it comes from path, so if it is going in clockwise direction, if it comes from 1, it will send to 2, and if it comes from 2, it sends to 3. If it comes from 3, it sends to 1. So he sends the light, intense light from 3, and from this beam splitter, half goes here, half goes here. Out of those, half goes down. Since it is vertically polarized, it processes this polarizer 100% leads to this source. So this is the source, laser source, or diode, which laser diode which gives you the horizontally polarized light. Vertically polarized light. So since it receives the photon from E, its temperature increases and the wavelength changes. But H is perpendicular to the polarization, so nothing passes by Malloch's law. So no wavelength change, this remains in lambda 1. And vertical becomes lambda 3. And in this case, 50% of the E photon reaches the sources because of Malloch's law, which is in 45-degree angle. And so the wavelength is changed, but not that much change. It becomes lambda 3. Now, if I do a wavelength measurement, and then I apply polarizing beam splitter, I can find out which photon was created. So although I cannot measure them simultaneously in horizontal, vertical basis and diagonal basis, but now since I know the wavelength, I can decide which one has to be measured in which basis. So this is attack. So there are many such attacks. So I just list some. There is something called beam splitter attack, something called detector efficiency mismatch attack, because we don't have time to elaborate on that. But just a carry on message is that you have to make, ultimately the quantum cryptography has to be implemented with the base with some optical elements, and those optical elements are not perfect. So for example, a 50-50 beam splitter is 50-50 at a particular wavelength. If you change the wavelength, it will not remain 50-50. So in certain wavelengths, this is the ratio that how much port 1 receives, how much port 2 receives. So in certain wavelength, all the light will go in port 1, certain wavelength, no light will go in port 1. So I can decide by changing wavelength that which light will go where. Similarly, it will depend on the time that which detector will click with higher probability. So if I can decide the time of arrival of the signal, then I can decide that which detector. So that's how each can control the output. This is called a Trojan horse attack. So suppose here is Alice, and Alice has many components. So there is a laser, and as part of that, from polarizing beam splitter comes to detection scheme. So that will be the reference beam. The rest of the thing goes to circulator to Alice, and it's reflected back from different components like beam splitter, commutator, variable attenuator, and phase modulator, etc., and return back. So when it returns back, since it's a anti-clockwise circulator, it will follow this path and come to the detection schemes, and finding out the phase difference between them, I can find out some kind of encoding information of the component which is present in Alice's side. So of course I can stop this by applying another circulator here, which will not allow any light to enter Alice's port from outside. So this is the last one. So this is the Trojan horse attack summarized. So the boy is telling a girl, so that I don't believe, trust you. The girl will say, why? Because you reflect light. And the girl says that that's why you can see my beautiful face. Eve says, and then the boy says that, but Eve can also see you. So the boy is Bob, girl is Alice. So they don't want that Eve to see. Then give me a circulator. So a circulator will stop that the light will not be reflected and come back to. So if they just put another circulator here, that the reflected light will go in some garbage, it will not come in this path. So it will not go to 2, it will go to 3. So another, and actually whatever is going out, that will not reach Alice's port. So that Alice can ensure. So you see that if a scalable quantum computer is built, the notion of security will change, not only in the communication perspective, also from computation perspective. And most of the things we use there can be found, including most of the cartoons from this book and the right my group. And quantum hacking is also one possibility. And for faculty, since this is going to be very important for students, so I show some simple devices, and these devices are not very costly. So you can think of buying these devices for your labs and start some kind of laboratory activities in your institutes too. So I'll stop here, and if there are some questions, I can answer.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I just want to know, that means a secured key and a series of photons we can use for cryptography.
Those photons, those we are using the photons for generating the key, and then so say in DB84 protocol and such things, we are creating the qubits, and then following the protocol that first I create a random sequence of 0, 1, plus, minus, then Bob randomly measures them in 0, 1 basis or plus, minus basis, compare the basis, those bases where they match, they keep them. So this, we do certain steps, and after those steps, I get a secure key. And once I get a key, the key is sequence of zeros and ones, and then I use the classical scheme for encryption. So, and there is a principle called Karshov's principle, which claims that a key is, if a key is secure, then the crypt is secure. So the primary objective here is to create a secure key, and that is the secure key is generated via quantum resources. And here, in the most popular protocol DB84, the quantum resources single photon states of polarization, horizontal, vertical, 45 degree, 135 degree, but I can do it many different ways. I can start with entangled photons also, but cryptography is mostly about mostly about photonic realization of the qubit, because otherwise you will not be able to send it from one place to other place.
Yes, sir.
Any other participants want to ask any questions?
Just a moment, I cannot hear you properly.
I have one question.
Yeah, you can ask.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
Hello.
Pathak sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you can ask your question.
Sir, can you please elaborate on how we
I can see that someone has raised hand.
can
It's already asked you, sir.
how user can be authenticated on a quantum network? That is, how to perform user authentication?
So the question is how the user perform user authentication.
Okay, so authentication is a different scheme, and actually quantum key distribution can be viewed as a key amplification. So for authentication, you must have some initial, means however small, some initial key should be there. So just like your OTP means one-time password. So initially some pre-shared key is there, and that uses, and many schemes are used for authentication. So it initially means there is already shared some key with the Bob or Alice, and then they shared using one of these schemes, means, and just suppose I just give you a simple idea that you already have a n qubit key, and out of those n qubits you take n by 2 as message and n by 2 as key, and you do make two strings of n by 2 and create a string of n by 2 XOR n by 2, and then share that with Bob, and then Bob can check that, because Bob also has the same string, that Bob can decode and check that it's coming from the same person or not. So there are many authentication tricks, but authentication is done in the beginning, and authentication requires a prior key generation. So completely public key quantum crypto system is not possible. So somewhere it's not public, means that initial key cannot be distributed publicly. So it's a layer-based structure. Means initially authentication has to be done. QKD is above that, and after QKD, privacy amplification and error correction has to be done. And then also it's not application. The application sits on top of it. Finally, you have to do the communication.
Can we able to use it the biometric authentication? Because initially I'm using the key, and later on if I want to use that biometric authentication, so can it be possible? With, biometric authentication. Biometric.
No, but even
likewise,
for biometric
fingerprint,
authentication, there are other party means your biometric data is also encoded in terms of zeros and ones, and the other party must have those zeros and ones beforehand.
Yes.
And in this kind of security, I use only one. So even if you are using biometric information, and that I have your fingerprint, and for the first time only I will use that. Next time when I apply BB84 or some protocol, I will create a key. Suppose I create a key string of 100 bits, and then I will keep 10 bits of that for next time and authentication. Next time I create 1000 bits and again keep some 10 bits or 50 bits for authentication in the next round. So every round means I keep a part for authentication in next round. But the first time authentication, some pre-shared key must be there.
Okay.
Anybody else want to ask any queries? Because we have some time left now. Okay, I think no queries from the participants. Thank you so much, sir, for giving your valuable time and enlightening us with quantum security aspects. So thank you so much, sir.
For organizing this.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks a lot, sir. Namaskar, sir.
Thank you, sir.